Welcome to Villages of Santa Fe. This is our next in our series of Conversations That Matter, which is a great program because all we're trying to do here is bring you things that make your life easier. So today going to be talking about downsizing. And I think that is a topic, obviously, because of the number of people who signed up, is a very popular topic. So Villages of Santa Fe provides age appropriate live and online and in-person exercise programs, and our workshops focusing on balance, strength, and flexibility, all critical for fall prevention. You may ask why downsizing is so important to fall prevention, but so much of what we talk about in our program, fall prevention, is decluttering and making your house safer. So this is just an extension of that. We have our wonderful presenter. I am Ann Church. I'm founder and executive director of Villages of Santa Fe. I'm also a master trainer for the Department of Health in fall prevention programs. And Karen is here today, which is wonderful. I went to her presentation recently at the Unitarian Church, and people were just blown away. They just love listening to her content. I just want to let you all know this is going to be a fairly large class. So, what I'm going to do is if you have questions or comments, if you will raise your hand, and then I can ask you to unmute. And you can also, there is in your, should be down below, should be a deal where you can raise your hand. But if you want to raise your hand, I can let you unmute and you can ask questions. Again, we will be going forward with this. We're recording this today. It'll be up by Friday morning on our site, Villages of Santa Fe. And we will also have downloads and handouts that um, you will be able to download because Karen has a lot of great resources. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over to Karen and she will introduce herself.
Well, thanks, Anne. Thanks to Anne and Michelle Rothwell from Villages for the wonderful welcome. And thank you all for attending. I think we've got 42 of you with us today from not just Santa Fe, but other places as well. I want to give a special shout out to my ex-neighbors up in Taos, Taos Elders and Neighbors Together, or TENT, which provides very similar services that Villages does up there. So hi to you all. Um, I want to encourage you during our time together to take notes if you're willing to, but as Anne mentioned, we are going to be sending out some support materials later this week that you can use to follow up with. Um, as Anne mentioned, my business is downsizing our older adults into senior communities. I was an interior designer in California for 25 years in Southern and Northern California. But this cartoon that's on the screen right now that many people laugh at when I share because it resonates and because it feels true to so many people. This was actually my reality in January of 2014 when my mother passed away in Los Angeles. And I had to deal with a very large home full of a lot of stuff because she never got rid of anything. And in the midst of grieving for her loss, I had to deal with emptying out her house and getting it ready for sale. And when I would visit with her, I would say, "Mom, let's go through your closets. Do you really need 3 dozen jackets from Chico's?" And she would say, "No, no, I just want to, play. I just want to have lunch and visit and go shopping." So she resisted my efforts when we could have gone through things. So that meant for me, after she passed and I was feeling really sad, I had to go through all this mountains of possessions. And I will say, I did not really feel loved. I knew she loved me, but it was a big responsibility. So And I thought, well, if I wasn't here doing this for her, if she didn't have a grown child willing and able to take care of all this, who would be doing it? So I recreated my business into Downsizing Made Simple. And now I support our elders when they move from their homes into independent or assisted living communities. And I often take care of the remaining possessions that they've left behind. But I'm not here to sell you on my services. I'm not here to sell you on moving into a senior community. I'm here to sell you on self-empowerment and self-discovery and the power of choice. Downsizing is often connected with or linked to moving into a smaller home. But I really want to sort of change that perception so that we all understand that we can start the downsizing process at any time and will benefit immediately and be even more prepared if and when you do decide to move into a smaller home. You'll be ahead of the game. And anytime you're prepared for the future, it's golden. And then you have a lot more choice and a lot more ease in your life. So why are we here today? Uh, well, first of all, how many of you out there love the idea of downsizing? Uh, I'm hoping to encourage all of us to turn any stories about the negativity or the onerous aspects of downsizing into one of curiosity and creativity. So what are we doing here today? Why are we here today? Uh, so we're going to explore the many feelings that comes up with the idea of letting go of things and focus on the main aspects of the downsizing process. Basically, they are emotional resistance, logistical inertia, which means basically, what do I do and how do I get started, and practical solutions. We're going to get curious about the many benefits of downsizing that result in a life with more ease, clarity, and self-discovery. And we'll come to understand that taking action now ensures more choice later for us. And at the very end, you're going to leave with an action plan and some easy practical steps to get going on your downsizing journey. And I'm really hoping that stimulates lots of thoughts and questions that you'll share with us. Your participation is just going to make our time together a lot richer and more beneficial for everyone. And as Anne mentioned earlier, just if you keep your comments brief so everybody can have a chance to share, that would be great. So let's start with some of the reasons we hold on to things. What are some of the reasons we have resistance to letting go? There's a few here on the screen: obligation or guilt, scarcity mentality. Scarcity mentality could be with a lot of my older clients who were raised during the Depression, and not having enough, had survival implications. So I see that a lot with some of my older clients. False sense of who we are now, which means we're holding on to things because they remind us of who we used to be. And then there's grief. Uh, and grief can be a very powerful motivator to hang on to things, because I've seen this with my clients where perhaps one spouse has passed and I'm moving a client into a smaller home, and they have their spouse's clothes and possessions, awards, notebooks, whatever, journals. And what do they do with all this? And they're being asked to let go of items that remind them of their partner, and they're now having to let go of things all over again, let go of their partner all over again. So grief is very powerful. I'm going to put this out to the group now. What other reasons do we hold on to things? What other reasons do we find hard to let go?
If you can put your questions into chat, or if you would like to unmute yourself.
I'll continue with a few other things on my list just to get you started. Sometimes we have fear of letting go of something because we think we might need it in the future. So being prepared for the inevitable, right? Maybe we've spent a lot of money on an item that we've never really used or worn, and we feel guilty about donating or letting go of it. uh, the permanence of not being able to change our mind. This comes up a lot with print photographs, which many of us either inherited or maybe we're of an age where we were taking a lot of print photographs. And if you let go of those, they're gone. So that comes up a lot with my clients. Sometimes people will say, "Well, I've always had it." Is that really a good reason to keep holding on to something? Um, the potential of something. Why, maybe you're a crafter. Do we have any crafters out there? Sewers, knitters, people that are makers. And I've been a seamstress all my life. So bins of fabrics really turned me on. Looking at lots of fabrics, I think it could be pillows, it could be a dress or whatever. If you're a knitter, seeing skeins of yarn maybe thrills you to think of what you could be making. So we hang on to things because of the potential of what they could be.
And Karen, I have a bunch of people answering here. I might need this someday. Yes. Passing them on to a family member, but not yet. Hey, ask them if they want it. Too overwhelming to throw away so much clutter. Sunk cost. I love it. I need to find places, organizations that could use musical instruments, art supplies. It was my mom's. I like my stuff. I do too. I love that.
And all of that is valid. So as I said, this is we're in a judgment-free zone here today. Where there are no wrong comments or questions. Um, so all of those are totally valid. One person there mentioned musical instruments. So yes, finding the right place to donate those will free you up to let go of them. So we'll get into that a little bit later. So
Just a second. Let me go back to where we are. There we go. Are we at this? Are we in the right place, or do I need to change slides?
we can stay there for a minute. So I'm going to ask all of you a question, and I don't need a show of hand. We're not looking at your screens or show of hands. This is more of a question that you're going to be asking yourselves. And this question is, how many out there of you are still the same person you were 20 years ago? Are you the same person you were 10 years ago or 5 years ago? Or even a year ago. And I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to answer for us. And I'm going to say that none of you out there were the same people you were 20 years ago or even a year ago. I think if you're living your life, on the planet now and you're getting older and you're subject to all the influences of being alive and our culture and loss and changes to our lives, our health, you're changing all the time. And one of my favorite quotes is from Bob Dylan, who says, "We're always in the process of becoming." So if we're not the same people we were a year ago or 20 years ago, why are we still hanging on to some of the possessions that we may have valued or thought we needed all those years ago? So this is just a way of filtering how we look at our things. So now we've talked about the resistance to letting go. Let's talk about some of the benefits. So Anne mentioned the safety aspects of downsizing and really having less stuff in our homes, on our floors, for example, so we're not tripping over things. A lot of my clients like to put their stuff in baskets or boxes or piles on the floor. It's very dangerous. Um, and having an organized home, to me, really lends itself to greater sense of well-being. kindness to your family. I mentioned what it was like for me with my mom having to deal with all her stuff. Getting ahead of this now and being in choice around editing out your possessions and really just keeping what you actually need really saves your grown children or friends or extended family from having to deal with that later. It really is a huge burden. Being prepared in advance. So if you are thinking about moving into a senior community at some point, or any smaller home, or moving in with your kids, for example, taking care of getting rid of stuff now is really great for you. You'll be in charge of the process. Giving yourself a greater sense of controlling your own legacy. So, we all have a story, and our things help us tell our story. So I've had many projects where somebody leaves the house in the morning and for whatever reason they don't come back. They go into the hospital and they never come back to their homes. I had a client in the 70s. He went out for a bike ride. He had a heart attack. He never came home. I was hired to come and take care of this whole lifetime of possessions. And it really, I'll never become not jaded about this. It really weighs heavily on me to be taking care of somebody else's valuable possessions. And this idea of legacy really came up for me last year. I don't know if you all saw the article in the Santa Fe New Mexican. This is from December 21st. This was a generation of aging creators, artists, who flocked to Santa Fe face estate planning crisis. I had been hired by the niece of an artist in Abiquiu who went into the hospital last January and passed away, never came home. And he left a huge body of work in his home. He didn't have an agent or a gallery. He just painted every day. And she was burdened with now dealing with his legacy. And I was hired to catalog and measure and photograph all his art, not to mention his collection of cachinas and rugs, and empty out his house for sale. But we are having a very hard time dealing with his artwork because galleries are now flooded with all these artists in their 80s who are wanting to suddenly deal with all their art. So, what other benefits of downsizing can you all think of that you'd like to share? Well, I'll jump in here. What about the pleasure of gifting people you know and love right now with maybe some items from your home that they would enjoy living with and you could enjoy watching them live with? So you're in control of where these items go rather than having somebody else come in after you're gone and making major decisions about your items for you.
I think, Karen, that's really true. And, I go and I look at items and I take a picture of it. I send it to my daughter and say, do you want this or not? And if you don't, it's gone. But it's really nice to be able to have that definitive answer so that I can impart that information to her as to why I think she should have it.
Well, and it's also a money saver because if you do this now with your own possessions and you run the game right now with your own possessions and dealing who gets what, you prevent your children or your trust or whatever and having to shell out money to deal with that later. And it is a very expensive process. So I invite all of you to take the lead and do this, all on your own earlier rather than later. All right, so now we've talked about the resistance to letting go or downsizing and the benefits. So you're ready to start, right? I'm getting the vibe now. You're all like ready to get going. So before we start down this path, my question would be, well, what is your intention? What is your motivation? Because this is a big journey that we're now about to go on. And just like with any endeavor, I think having a clear intention or motivation is a really good way to start. And the best intentions come from within, right? If you're doing this because your children are bugging you or leaning on you, it's not going to be an enjoyable process. Or if you feel guilty about having so many things, it's not going to yield the same results. So, do any of you out there now want to share some intentions or motivations that you've been considering lately? Is that Ellen?
Yeah, Ellen says she wants to be able to move when she's ready.
That's great, Ellen. And uh, getting ready for a move uh, is really good advice because when I move my clients and we have to start downsizing them just before the move, it really expands on the process and it adds a lot of overwhelm and anxiety. If you've already downsized and then you decide to move, all you have to do is worry about packing and moving. You don't have to worry about going through your entire house. So that's a really good motivation, Ellen. Thank you.
Let's see. And then Ellen also said she didn't want the last minute stress.
That's just like I said, Ellen, absolutely. You don't want to have to deal with the often challenging trauma of moving from your home and at the same time going through all your possessions and being triggered emotionally. This can be a very emotionally triggering process.
And then Sharon says she can thinks about getting a sense of freedom. I think that's wonderful. That's really true. And then Adrian says she has a large Italian history from her grandfather and tons of documents. She gives talks. What does she do with these things and documents? Don't know if I'll write a book. Adrian, that let's we could shelve that. We'll have a Q&A at the end of this, and maybe Karen might be able to give you some ideas. Lorna says less is better, easier to find things. Oh yeah.
Well, both of those are great. And Adrian, you're referencing your legacy, which I just touched upon, but yes, by all means, let's circle back and talk about that. But I really believe in the liberating aspect of this. Someone just mentioned freedom. This really is very liberating, and it just reminds us all that we own our things. They do not own us. So when I work with my clients and we're starting to go through their possessions, deciding what to move, what's going to go with them, or any of us that are addressing this process, if we were to say, well, I'm going to go through my home and I'm going to downsize today, it's too vague and it's just too overwhelming, and you probably won't make much progress. So, Anne, you want to put the categories up on the screen there? Please, thanks. So these are some basic categories of items and possessions that we all have. Books, clothing, artwork, kitchen, linens, office, household, personal, and essential items and food. So if you wanted to start with just these categories. So, for example, books are always a big deal for my clients because I have a lot of academics, people from LANL, from the lab. We're blessed in Santa Fe to have many educated, well-traveled people who collect art books and who are big readers. So they have huge libraries, but often when they're moving into a smaller home, they don't have nearly the amount of built-in shelves or storage for these books. And books hold memories, and we have relationships with our books. But like I tell my clients, we have libraries in Santa Fe. Clothing is another big category for people because clothing often represents who we used to be. We're going to get into that a little bit more later. If you are moving into a smaller space, you have to measure your existing closets there and compare it to the clothing you want to take to make sure it's all going to fit. Um, Artwork and collectibles. Artwork, to me, is a very interesting category here because a lot of us have purchased art over the years, maybe over decades. And how often do we really engage with our artwork? It's hanging on our walls, and we walk through our rooms and we maybe see the artwork, but how often do we really look at it? And do we really love it? And does it really bring us joy? So I'm inviting you to maybe rekindle your relationship with things that used to bring you beauty or still bring you beauty in your life. Kitchen is another big category. I mean, how often have we purchased a cooking tool or an appliance or a spice or an ingredient to make a dish, and then we've never used those things again? Linens, really strive to have only nice towels and matching sets and no threadbare sheets. Those could all be donated to Santa Fe Humane. Office and files is another big category because a lot of us at a certain age, we're paper people. We've collected paper, not like the younger generation that scans things in the cloud. So papers and files really pile up. And household is, cleaners and personal essential items, toiletries, and then there's food items. So these are the basic categories. But let's go to the next list here. So now we're going to go even deeper into focusing on specific categories that you can work with. So I refer to these as past life anchors. And the reason I describe them this way is because these are things that anchor us to a past version of ourselves. Objects, memories, and emotional triggers that keep us tied to earlier versions of who we used to be. And the point of this process that we're engaging with now is to keep us in the present, accurate in the present of who we really are now, and give us clarity about who we are and who we're going to be moving forward, and not to remind us or keep us anchored like a boat anchor into the past. So we're going to go through a couple of pages here of much more specific things. So we talked about clothes a minute ago. So a lot of us have in our closets clothes that maybe we wore in a past career. It could be more business attire, suits, or anything that reminds us of when we were successful in a business. A lot of my clients have shoe boxes full of high heels and strappy sandals. And these shoes are very pretty to look at, but they're not comfortable and they're outright dangerous. But they may have reminded us when we were younger and sexier, and I get that. There may be splurge pieces of clothing that you bought that you've kept out of guilt. I think that reminds me in Santa Fe, people who shop at the folk art market every year and buy some incredibly artistic, interesting piece of clothing and lose interest in that pretty quickly. Your medicine cabinet, old expired prescriptions, gifts kept out of obligation, anything you wouldn't buy again today. We've talked about things that we may want to keep just in case. Um, Again, journals, catalogs, binders, reports. This comes up a lot with me, with my clients from the lab in Los Alamos, these academics who maybe published and have all kinds of binders and journals of their life in the lab. And it defines who they used to be. Um, and they don't want to lose that. It's very valuable. Um, and we have the cartoon of the cardboard the cardboard boxes. I think it's the next slide. Yeah. So I think it's really common with a lot of us to save boxes that appliances or computer monitors or whatever, we keep those in the garage, thinking we might need them. So this is sort of a cautionary tale there. Thank you. Holiday decorations, Christmas and things, Thanksgiving, Easter and on Halloween. If you're moving into a smaller home, you're likely not going to have space for all of that. uh, Paperwork, magazines, junk mail, that really accumulates. So we talked about books a little while ago. We talked about kitchen, excessive jars and storage containers. This is really popular with my clients too. For some reason, and I count myself as a guilty party, I love glass storage containers, but how many do we actually need? Um, Anything that doesn't align with who you are now. So this is the umbrella that I'd like us all to have on while we're going through all these items is do these things really represent who I am now and where my life is going? And there are often indicators that tell us where our life is going. For example, if you've lost a spouse, now you're a single person, you're going to be living differently. If you started cooking more at home and not going out as much, that's going to indicate how you're going to be arranging your kitchen, for example. Items tied to a future you no longer want, nor is it realistic. I'm in the process of going through camping gear. I'm in my 70s and I haven't camped now for several years, but I used to camp. I don't think I have any friends that want to camp with me either. So I'm going through all my camping gear, and yeah, it's bringing up a lot of great memories, but I'm asking myself realistically, where and when am I going to camp and with whom? And there's no answer. So I'm now getting rid of a lot of my camping gear. Um, Anything that makes you feel guilty, it's not something you really want to live with, or anything that says, I should do this, or I should keep it, or I should get rid of it. That's not where you want to go either. The point of this all, I think, is to release things that give us more and get more clarity in what we keep, and in doing so, perhaps redefine our purpose in life. If our purpose used to be being a high-powered legal defense attorney, or a teacher, or a business owner, uh, we don't have to feel like we've lost our power or purpose. It's just a matter of redefining it and rediscovering it. And I think one way we do that is by being honest about the things that we surround ourselves with. So, if we're all willing, I'm going to lead us on a little exercise here. Now that we have a little bit of psychology around why we keep things and the benefits of letting go of things, I'm going to ask you all to close your eyes and take a few deep breaths and just sort of get grounded where you're sitting. And I'm going to ask that you sort of take a virtual tour through your homes. Walk through your kitchen. Think about maybe an item that you've seen in the back of a cupboard that you don't use, but you know it's there. You know it's lurking there. Or maybe open your closet door and there's a box of winter boots that you haven't worn, or maybe the strappy sandals we talked about. It could be another article of clothing. Um, Maybe it's that unfinished project in the garage that you just keep hanging on to. So connect with that item and sort of hold it in front of you. It could be a book. It could be a piece of artwork, just something that is there, but you don't really love it, need it, or use it. Now, can you find a way to have a conversation with this item? Really, really focus on the relationship you have with it and say, you know what? You brought me pleasure for so many years. You were useful for a while. I'm not the person that needed you 10 years ago, last year. I've outgrown you. Uh, and I'd like to free you and let go of you to perhaps support or give somebody else joy. I'm willing to let go of you without any guilt And I'm in control of this. This is my choice. Thank you and goodbye. And can you celebrate the fact that you've grown and changed? So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes, a couple of seconds here to think about this item and the conversation you're having with it. And then anybody who's willing to share, I'd love to hear what that conversation sounded like. Would anybody like to share?
I was putting it in chat. My neighbor is from England, and I had a pottery teapot that I just hated, but it was a gift from a very dear friend, and I didn't feel like I could just like dispose of it. And she's thrilled with it.
But so Anne, did she gift it to a friend?
I gave it to my neighbor. Yeah, she just loves it. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is a great example of sort of sharing the joy. I mean, you had joy of it for a while, but now you get to experience somebody else loving it. So I think and you were in charge of that. So I think that's a great story. Anybody else out there?
Yeah, this is Michelle. We have I think it's 10 years old now. It's a brand new ice cream maker. It's been sitting in our kitchen pantry for years, and I don't know why we bought it, and I don't know why we still have it, but I think we need to get rid of it.
Well, I'm sure for a lot of people, homemade ice cream, sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah.
Oh, but you're bringing up a good point. It could be the popcorn maker, the bread maker, the fondue, whatever. So, well, thank you for sharing all that. I think, what I'm trying to remind people of is that we do have relationships with things, and but at the end of the day, we are in charge of those relationships. So, ideally, what we end up living with after this process are things that we truly appreciate, that really stimulate joy in us or provide for an essential function.
Karen, I have a really great comment from Luann. She said, my best friend told me years ago that just because someone gives you something doesn't mean you have to keep it forever.
That's absolutely true. And also remember that once the gift is given and it's yours to do what you want with. And you can really appreciate the intention of the person who gave you the gift. Maybe they didn't know you that well. Maybe they misread you. Maybe they thought you needed something that you didn't think you needed. But I'm sure the intention was good, but it doesn't mean you're saddled with it forever. And there's likely somebody out there that will really appreciate this gift as well. Anything else anybody else would like to share?
Yeah, somebody, let's see, let me comment from Sally. She said she moved to a small, 2,300 miles, got rid of a great deal of her items, but she still finds that she has about 50% more than what she needs, and she's creating a whole new life. And she intermittently opens boxes to find things I can use now. I get rid of unneeded things by bit, so I hardly notice they're gone. So cool.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Anne. Yeah. So Sally's doing it almost like, as a practice. So we can look at this almost like a yoga practice or a meditation practice or an exercise practice where if you make this part of your daily experience, you'll barely notice it. So now let's get into letting go of sentimental items because this always comes up with my clients. And sentimental items are things that are like cues or reminders of a person experience or a version of ourselves from long ago. Typically, these are things from family, and there's a lot of emotional triggering here. And when we're dealing with sentimental items, we're no longer in the realm of logic. So intellect or being practical is really not a lot of help in the realm of sentimental items. So we're putting up a few bullet points here. We've talked about grief, and I mentioned that when if you've lost a beloved partner or family member, it could be a parent or another family member, and then you have to deal with letting go of their possessions. It's like losing them all over again. Um, Items we hold on to without conscious thought, uh, just because we've held on to something for decades, seems to imbue them with a value of being a treasure that is not really accurate. So, looking at something that we've had for a long time might reveal that it really doesn't have the value that we thought it did. Um, Sometimes there's duplicates of sentimental items. Family photos is a really good one. So picking out just the best of family photos and maybe collecting them into a book. But the fewer the items that have the greater value, the more you're going to enjoy those items that you've kept. Was there another page there, Anne? Right. Uh, Remember that things that have meaning for us are likely not going to have meaning for other people. So if you're leaving these things behind for others to deal with, they probably won't respect them the way you'd like them to. And they just, the things that you think are so valuable and are a treasure to you may end up going to savers. So I'd rather have you address them now. Keeping sentimental items because of guilt. And again, this might be something that we inherited from a family member. And that's tough. What do we do with that armoire, or the trunk or the china or the crystal that is almost impossible to deal with here in Santa Fe? And again, kicking the can down the road by leaving this for our children to deal with is really not the best solution. Uh, this can be a very emotional process. So going through sentimental items, you want to really want to pace yourself. The other, the other thing I find is with my clients going through sentimental items is they use it to take a trip down memory lane. And this is inevitable and natural, that it's going to trigger stories that we really want to get into. But I would invite you to try to catch that if that's what's happening with you and bring yourself back to the present. Like, why are you doing this? The point of doing this is to make your life easier and more streamlined moving forward, to save your kids from dealing with this, and for addressing your future needs. So try not to get too bogged down in the past with this. Um, Trying to organize is great here, even in the midst of a lot of emotional triggering. Being organized is great. So if you can organize your photos, one space for collectibles and mementos, love letters, whatever. Um, that will help you a lot too, is to try to organize everything that you're doing. So letting go of sentimental items isn't the same as letting go of memories. So people think that once the possession or the item is gone, the memory that it inspires is gone too. So just a reminder that the memories will always be with us. You'll never lose the memory of that loved one or that experience that you had.
So Karen, somebody asked about digitizing 35 millimeter slides, and I think that that applies to 35 millimeter slide. It applies to photographs and all of that. One of the things that I've found in digitizing photographs and slides is that If you want to pay a whole lot of money, you just give them the big box, right? But then you're going to be paying for every single slide or photograph to be digitized. And you may need to go ahead and, first of all, curate that selection first. So if you have 12 slides of your kid on stage doing the dance, how many do you really want? Do you want 12 or do you want one? So there are plenty of places that digitize slides. They will also convert um, video to digital. If you've got camera work that you would like to have digitized, you can just go on to Google and Google companies that can do that. You can compare their prices and it depends on what you want to have done and the outcome. But I really would encourage you to please go ahead and curate your selection first, because then it's going to be more meaningful to you.
Thank you, Anne. I totally agree. And I think, for a lot of us who are raised with cameras and print photographs, there are inevitably going to be a lot of duplicates and a lot of variety to choose from. And really just choose the best of the best. The way to deal with photographs is a completely other discussion. It's a very big one. But thanks for getting that started. Um, all right, so practical solutions. Now that we've decided that we're going to downsize and we've gone through everything, or we want to get going on the downsizing process, um, uh, how do we start? So I always invite people to start small because we want to build on our successes. If we get too ambitious and we get discouraged, it really won't take us anywhere. So start small. So I suggest that you start in the kitchen because it's sort of a non-emotional zone. And not just that, but start with one drawer. Open one drawer. Sometimes it could be a junk drawer that we all have. Take the drawer out of the cabinet and empty it onto a tablecloth on your table. I like to use a white tablecloth so everything shows up. And it's really important that you empty the drawer, or you empty the shelf, or you empty the cabinet, or you empty the closet. You don't want to go through things where they've been living and are very comfortable. You want to take them out of their comfort zone and away from their home so that you can see things more clearly, and look at each thing as it is, and then put whatever you want to keep back in that drawer. Put the drawer back, and then you are done. And that's a clean drawer. You can go through your whole kitchen doing that. Um, the other thing you could do is put a cardboard box by your back door if it leads out to the garage. And as you're walking out to your car every day, maybe you've got something you've picked up in your closet or a book you want to donate. Put it in that box. Maybe put the box just beyond the back door there. And if you're not living with it for days on end, then it's ready to donate. You're good to go with that box. Um, Go through the categories that we've talked about. Attack books first. Your clothing. Be methodical about that. Make a list of people in your life, friends that you'd be comfortable gifting with the items that you're wanting to get rid of. It's wonderful if somebody comes and takes things away for free. You don't have to load them in your car or pay someone to come and pick them up and donate them. Think about all the charities you might favor, whether it's What the Cat Dragged In or Habitat for Humanity. There's no shortage of places to donate, and we're going to get into that more specifically in a minute. Of course, there's consignment stores and you can monetize some of your items. And then lastly, partner up. Find a pal or a buddy, not to downsize along with, because you really don't want this person talking with you about your clothes in your closet, because that's going to probably spin out of control really quickly. But maybe a partner that you meet for coffee once a week and talk about your progress. Well, here's what I donated. I'm looking for a place to donate this. Do you have any ideas? So that you feel supported in the process. So the next thing that comes up with my clients, and this was one of the reasons that people have resistance to letting go, is, well, now what do I do with it? I'm happy to let go and downsize, but where does it all go? And this can be this can be very stymieing for people because they literally don't know where to take stuff. So we'll be sending out a list at the end of the week, and that's local, Santa Fe, of many places to take everything from your home that you're ready to let go of. And if you're not living in Santa Fe, I invite you to sort of look at this list and find similar resources where you are. Not every place takes every item. So I really encourage you all, if you've got clothes or books or whatever, camping gear, tents, foodstuffs, kitchen, whatever you have, to call before you take things to be donated and make sure they're willing to accept what you have. And they all have different accepting days and times to accept. Um, so we'll be sending out quite a comprehensive list of items for this at the end of the week too. Um, so we want to allow a little time here for more of a discussion, but we're going to end with one of my favorite Chinese proverbs. When is the best time to plant a tree? The answer is 20 years ago. When is the next best time? Today. So it's never too late to get started. And I hope you all feel now a little more empowered and more curious and excited about the downsizing process. And I'd love to hear some comments or questions.
Right. So if you'd like to unmute and ask Karen any questions or make some comments, we will try to be respectful of everybody's time. So we have a few more minutes here for comments, and I'll watch the chat if you'd like to put it in chat.
Well, Karen, it's Michelle again. I saw a note from Dawn in the chat, and I think I've heard it a lot from people regarding downsizing and decluttering. And one of the issues I think that people have is just it's overwhelming to start, and it kind of prevents people from starting at all. And I think your idea to start small and also emptying out whatever it is you're going to try to tackle. Because I've tried that, just leaving things where they are, and you end up just not very successful with that. So,
Well, and that's why I think we've tried in our time together to provide tools to help focus because it is overwhelming if you look at your entire home and you don't know where to start. So starting small, and maybe you take out one drawer of your dresser that has socks and just deal with your socks and keep the nicest socks and put the rest in a bag for savers or whatever. And then pat yourself on the back and say, "Yay, I did that drawer." And you've succeeded. You're already a success. And then go to the next drawer and focus on that one piece of furniture. And so you want to, it's called habit stacking, which is what you might do with your physical well-being. You're doing that here as well. And you really want to build on your successes and maybe 15 minutes a day. But thank you for bringing that up, Michelle.
sure.
We had a comment, local Facebook sites usually have free giveaway places. That's really true. I just want you to be very careful and just be safe in responding to that so that, again, Facebook or Craigslist or whatever is open to the public. So if you do put things on there, you probably treat it like you would if you're doing a garage sale where you have it out the front or have somebody there with you and the people are not invited into your home.
Right. And so if these people are, in a situation like this, unless it's a free site, if you're hoping to make money on your item, we have a lot of great consignment stores. They're very, very particular. And so I advise you to take pictures, whether it's clothing or whether it's furniture. take pictures with your phone, and you can either email them these pictures or go in person. And there's a couple of consignment shops on this list we're going to send out. But when it comes to China and crystal, that's going to be a donation thing because really, yeah, and you're talking about younger people who don't want the same things that maybe we valued or our parents valued too. So thank you all for your comments and questions.
Madeline was asking for a page for electronics. Again, something that's very, you need to be sure that when you're donating um, just getting rid of your electronics, that all of your personal information has been removed. So before you give a computer or a phone or a tablet, it needs to be wiped clean and reset to factory settings so that your personal information is not passed along with those electronics. So Elizabeth said Staples does tech recycling. That's true. Some of them will charge you. It depends on the item. Like they'll charge for monitors, but maybe not tablets. But check with them. I think yeah, it's Staples, and there's a computer group. Trying to remember. I'll try to put it in the list. But one of those things you're going to have to just absolutely just probably throw away is all of those cords. I mean,
Well, and one final thing, and I think we're at noon now. Um, I think for a lot of people, it's just too onerous and it's just too overwhelming, and they throw things away. At the end of the day, they have a trash bin. They just throw things away, and it gets put in the landfill, and it's a very easy, immediate gratification kind of solution, but it really isn't the best solution. There's other ways. It just takes a little effort. And sometimes there's a cost factor too. So thank you for presencing, being cautious about your information too on computers. Yeah, those cords, the cords get thrown, we can donate them to Habitat, but they'll likely throw them away at the end of the day.
Just one last thing I wanted to mention. My husband and I have been trying to get rid of all of our stuff for years, and we just never have gotten around to it. And we don't have children to leave anything to. So I'm thinking it might be a good idea to maybe plan an hour or two a week and put it on a calendar and maybe just dedicate that hour, like, I don't know, kind of going on a date and start getting rid of stuff so that because we never get around to it. So that might be something we could do.
Maria, I think that's an excellent suggestion. Just as you would put on your calendar that you're going to the gym, or you have a hair appointment, or you're going to a doctor's appointment, this implies intention and commitment. And so I think if you put this on your calendar, and you're blessed to have a buddy, a built-in buddy, which is
Yeah.
great, and it impacts you both. Um, Putting it on the calendar and committing to do it, and really in no more than an hour to start with, and have a written list, have it written in writing what you're going to do for that hour. You're going to go to the closet, you're each going to do your own clothes or whatever, and then have an idea of where it's going to go. If you think your clothes are consignable and they're still attractive, you could take pictures and, try to monetize it. Otherwise, they need to go out pretty
Yes.
quickly. You know what I
Thank
mean?
you.
But
Yep.
thank you for presencing the idea of commitment. I think that's huge here. Thank you. Well, and I think we're at the end of our hour. Does anybody else have any final comments or questions? Elizabeth. So Elizabeth's asking about musical instruments and art supplies. So Elizabeth, I would start with schools because they're still teaching band and they still have musical classes. I would start with them. Art supplies, ditto. I would start with schools. Funding for schools isn't what it used to be when most of us were children. So they would probably appreciate musical instruments and art supplies.
Thank
Karen, the
you.
only other thing that I wanted to mention, and this would probably be a solution for folks who were helping in the case of a death in the family where there's a house full of goods and no family really to help. There are companies in Santa Fe that you pay, but they are professionals and they can come in and give you advice and help you go through things and decide the best way to dispose of things, whether, taking it to Goodwill or other places like, the cat and that sort of thing. But they have a good purpose in certain circumstances and can really provide some help.
Well, I do that for my clients as well. And you want to put up my contact information, please?
That's great, Karen.
Yeah, so very often when I move my clients or I get called in because a client has passed, I support people in dealing with the remaining assets and making sure they get dealt with consciously. So thanks for bringing that up, Michelle.
Sure, I'm glad to know that you do that too.
All right. Well, thank you all so very much. I really enjoyed our time together. I'm sorry I couldn't really see your faces as if we were in person, but I
Thank
wish
you,
you all the
Karen.
best. And feel free to email me if you do have any outstanding questions or things that come up. My email's on the screen. I'll be happy to support you however I can.
Thank you very much. This
Thank
has